Hello and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for being here. This is the Her Version podcast. We have had over 400 women grace the stages of this podcast. I so appreciate the ladies who come on and give their time and give value to those of you listening. For those of you that are already jumping on live, thank you for being here, for hanging out with us. If you could do us a huge favor and share this video, whatever platform you are on, so that we can get more eyes and more ears on this awesome, inspiring content. So the Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I'm speaking with an amazing woman named Allison K Dagney. Allison is a thought worker coach, author of When Tears Leave Scars, and survivor of a 20-year covert narcissistic relationship. Her goal is to expand awareness of this rampant type of abuse and help others to be emotionally empowered and find inner peace along their healing journeys. Ultimately, Allison wishes to help victims gain the needed strength to escape and gain the survivor's tools to heal, all while helping outsiders gain a better understanding of hidden abuse. Allison lives in the Midwest of the United States with her 3 children and their beloved rescue dog. She enjoys spending time with her children, playing in nature, helping others as a coach, and writing. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. I'm so happy to be here. Really, really excited.
Thank you for being here. I so appreciate it. Hey, I want to ask, while I was reading this, I stumbled a little bit. Is it one relationship covert narcissist, or is it more than one?
What do you mean?
Well, I read.
I was just in one
Okay, cool.
narcissistic relationship. Yeah.
Awesome. Because I read it plural.
Oh yeah. I was just in one, but I want to help people. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I so appreciate you being here, hanging out with us, sharing some of this. This is near and dear to my heart. Narcissistic abuse is why this podcast even exists. I started this podcast on my own. Her version was me. I was her, and I was telling my story of narcissistic abuse over the course of months and months and months. And women started to just come out of the woodworks telling me their stories. And I started to kind of ask, like, hey, would you be interested in coming on my little YouTube channel at the time and sharing your story? And some of the women actually were like, yeah, I would 100%. So that's kind of how the whole thing started. And then it's expanded into so many different arenas. But I do think that narcissistic abuse is such a misunderstood, invisible, silent thing that so many women are enduring, and many times not even realizing that they are enduring it. So I so appreciate you coming on. I would love to kind of talk about the elephant in the room first, and that is that you're not on camera. Can you talk about why you are not on camera?
Yes, of course. So I decided after I realized that I was being abused narcissistically, I got educated and I planned an escape and I got the heck out of there. Right. So when that happened, I had this sort of revelation that I can't possibly be the only person who's ever dealt with this. You know, I had what most people would think of was like a normal life in a very happy family, and I had 3 children and a husband, and he had a great job, and all these things kind of looked picture perfect. And I thought, wow, if this is happening to me, who else is it happening to? And so from there, that sparked my writing journey to write this book. But the reason why I don't show my face and I don't show it on any social media, well, one, because I do have those kids that I mentioned earlier, and they're still all minors. I want to protect them, and I want to protect myself from legal battles that I know if my ex-husband found out about this book, the success level that I've had, the coaching business that I'm doing, that he would no doubt drag me back to court. So I keep my face hidden, and I actually use a pseudonym. So Allison isn't really my actual name. So he wouldn't be able to just Google that and find me. I'm doing this to protect myself and protect my children. I know that I would win, right? Like, I know that if there was a legal battle, I've done everything I can possibly do to avoid like a slander or libel case. But I don't really want to spend my time in court. I don't want to spend my money defending something like this. I want to use my tools and resources and time to help people. And that's it. So that's why you don't see my face, but you can hear my voice.
I love it. And I so understand that, I dealt with those thoughts also. And I actually didn't start speaking my story. Not that my son's father was not my abuser, but I didn't start telling my entire story as far as being a single mom and not getting child support and all of that stuff until my son was, 17 and a half going on 18, where I felt more comfortable doing that. And I think that that's so important. You have to recognize that there are other people in your world that you can't, just sit down and just start blurting off things sometimes, because there's repercussions for things that are happening. So I so love that you took action. I so love that, despite the situation you're in, you're still standing up for what you know is right and still speaking your story, and you're working around it. I think that shows so much tenacity on your end, and such a testament to winning, really winning and showing women that yes, and, yes, all of the things that you stated, and you can still make a difference. And I think that is the most important thing. So I would love to kind of give you the stage. I would love for you to be able to speak your story and tell us a little bit about the journey that you went on to get to where you are now.
Okay, sure. So a lot of people could probably relate to my story as far as what happened from the beginning. And I'm not going to give it all away, but I'll give you the kind of basics of what happened to me. I went from what I considered a normal childhood, a happy upbringing and a happy life, to meeting this person who ended up abusing me for 20 years. I met him when I was 19. We entered into this massive love bombing stage. That lasted for a long time. And then shortly afterwards, we ended up getting engaged, quickly got married, was rushed into the marriage. Even though I wanted to push it back further, he was like, no, 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 we have to get married fast. We have to get married now. Like, everything was rushed, everything, that whole typical love bombing where they are just buying you things and telling you you're the soulmate and you're the love of their life and doing all these wonderful things for you and rushing into the relationship. And we were married, and I actually had a job at that point. I was in the corporate world, and I had a pretty successful job for about 5 years until I ended up getting pregnant. And then when I got pregnant with our first child, it was, you need to stay home, you need to quit your job, you need to, and at that time it was sort of enticing to me because I wanted to take care of my babies and I wanted to be a mom and all of that. But it was also a high pressure situation from him as well as his entire family, that if you don't actually take care of your babies and you don't you don't use the opportunities that you have, then you're a bad mom or you're a bad person, or you actually don't really care about your children if you're going to ship them off to daycare, right? These were the stories that I was told. And so I was like, okay, here I am, quitting my job, becoming a stay-home mom. And from there, I completely lost every ounce of independence that I had, financial independence. I was isolated from people at work. Because obviously I didn't have those people anymore. I was isolated from friends and family. And it just became this really dark downward spiral. And the entire time I didn't know what was going on, right? I just thought, oh, marriages have problems and, we're just not getting along. But it was constant. And I felt so awful about myself. I felt like I was a horrible person, a horrible mom. I couldn't do anything right. I was constantly trying to make him happy. And I felt like, Sabrina, that my entire marriage was, all the problems were my fault. I completely 100% believed it. And he had me going to therapy and getting medicated and trying to figure this out. And you need to get this straightened out. Something is wrong with you. You are crazy. Like, these were the things that I was told. And so I was trying so hard to just reach an unreachable goal. I mean, every single time I would get closer, it was like the finish line just got pulled back. And I didn't know what was happening. I had no idea what narcissistic abuse was. I had no idea even what emotional abuse was. And this was a person who never raised a hand at me, who never, maybe rarely, yelled. I'd never even heard this man say a cuss word, not one single time. So when we're talking about hidden abuse, this was like extremely covert. And so, of course, I'm thinking, I've been gaslit. I've been emotionally manipulated. I've been controlled. I've been coerced. That everything is my fault. So it wasn't until, and this is what my book centers on, it starts from the beginning and goes all the way until I get out, is someone on the internet who I was connected to told me, this is like abuse. Like, you are being abused. And I immediately went into denial, like, absolutely not. And they actually said the words psychopath and sociopath to me. And I thought, there's absolutely no way I would be dumb enough to marry a psychopath. Like, no way. And so I dismissed it. But the seed had been planted. It was already in there. So I went out and started researching and started reading. And then my mind exploded. Then I was like completely aware of what was happening. And it was an awful gut punch. And it was a horrible feeling. And if anybody's ever realized that this has happened to them, they know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like your world just sort of implodes on you. It's like, how could they do this to me? How could they blame me for everything when really the whole time it was them abusing me? So my story is how I went from this, unsuspecting victim all the way through 20 years of abuse, realizing that what it was, planned my escape, got out, and completely transformed this traumatic experience into a triumphant experience.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't easy. I mean, it's not easy, but I wanted people to know, and the reason why I wrote this book, that there is hope. You can be inspired. This is something that is common, that other people are suffering with too, and you're not alone.
100. One of the biggest issues that and I think anybody who has endured this sort of abuse and recognizes it, is trying to give light to what narcissistic abuse looks like, what it sounds like. Without it just sounding petty, right? We are like, yeah, he was mean. And they're like, yeah, everybody's husband's a dickhead sometimes. Like, get over it. But there's a distinct difference between sometimes your husband's a little jerky and narcissistic abuse. Do you have a story that you could share, briefly, to kind of highlight a good example, a personal example of narcissistic abuse in your relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a lot of them actually. But one thing, let's talk about gaslighting really quickly, because a lot of people get confused about what gaslighting is. They think that just because someone lies to you that they're trying to gaslight you. And that's not true. Like, lying, right, and telling you that your reality is something different is a form of gaslighting. But it's when they make you believe, and they take it a step further, make you believe that you are misunderstanding, or that your memory isn't right, or that you didn't understand it correctly, or whatever that might be. So let me give you a situation where we had 2 sets of keys for our vehicle. And I was the main driver of that vehicle. And I had them on, always put my keys on a hook when I came home. I never wanted to lose my keys, so I always stuck them on the hook. The spare set was also on the hook. Well, one day, my ex-husband at the time, well, my husband at the time, my ex now, He had to go somewhere and he used the keys, and we couldn't find the spare set of keys. And we looked and looked and looked, and he blamed me and said, well, you must have put them somewhere and this is your fault. And I knew, because I always put those keys in the same spot every time. Like, I knew, but I started to doubt myself. I started to think, well, maybe I did set them somewhere, or maybe I did, and I didn't want to be the person that was like, no, I'm right and you're wrong, so I would constantly like think of other things like, well, maybe I did. And this went on for 6 months. We had not found those keys. 6 months.
Oh my God.
And one day he went to go, he didn't wear a suit often to work, but he did have to wear it occasionally. And I don't know, and sometimes like to a funeral or whatever, or wedding. And one day he went back into the closet to pull out a suit that he hadn't worn in a really, really long time.
6 months, maybe.
Yep. Reached to the pocket and found the keys, right? So of course I'm ecstatic. I'm so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, you had put those in your pocket from however long ago, from the last time that you wore the suit. He looked me dead in the eyes and was like, you put those keys there to make me think that I was the one that misplaced them, that I was the one that created the lost keys situation. And I just remember feeling like this just dark cloud coming down on me. Like I had discovered the truth, right? I knew it, but then it was like, I know I didn't do that. I would never do that. Why would I do that? Why would I want to hide the keys? I've been looking, everywhere for these keys for 6 months. I'm the one that's being told that, I had misplaced them. So I want to find them, right? So I can be like, look, here they are. We've got the keys. We don't have to stress over it anymore. That is a prime example of how gaslighting works, because then they double down and then they make you feel like that you are still the one at fault. He could not say, oh, you know what? That's right. When we went to the funeral 6 months ago, I had put those in the pocket and didn't take them out and hung the suit up in the closet, and there they were. That was never going to happen. It was always still my fault.
Yeah, 100%. And such a feeling of being cornered and absolutely no way out of the argument.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a very common theme. And a lot of times being trapped physically in a car. You'd have these like car drives and these long conversations, and they would be like the best way I can describe them is just sort of chaotic and circular, and they never went anywhere. And it was always me just feeling super bad about myself. And I can specifically remember saying to him one time, and I wrote about this in my book, I feel like, and I didn't know about narcissistic abuse at this time. And I said, I feel like you're just chipping away at me. And eventually there's going to be nothing left. And I had no idea that was something that abusers do, is they just constantly chip away at your self-worth and at your confidence. And that's the whole point, right? Is to, bring you down so that they can maintain this position of control and superiority over you.
Yeah, 100. That car thing. First of all, both these stories are so triggering, because my ex and I, keys and cars were like the friggin' number one denominator in our relationship. But just recently, more than once, but just recently, I was on the road at a stoplight, and there was a couple in front of me that were obviously dramatically arguing inside their vehicle. And right when the light turned green, the woman got out of the driver's side of the car and walked around to the passenger side of the car, opened up the car, and was telling the husband to get out and drive. She's like, just get out and drive. Just get. And he would like refuse to get out. She was like pulling at him, and we're all like in that line waiting to go. I'm literally directly behind them. And he would not get out of the car to drive. So finally, she just closed the door. The driver's side is open, and she just starts walking down the street. And I don't know the situation, right? It could have been anything. Like, it could have been 100% her fault. I have no idea. But super triggering for me, because so many times the person who's being abused looks like the crazy one.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was so many situations where I myself, I wasn't that traumatic, but I would get out of the car. Like we would be at a red light and I would open my door and I would just walk out of the car and just start walking down the road, just bawling my eyes out or yelling or whatever it was, because being in the constraint of that vehicle, feeling stuck, feeling like a prisoner could literally make you go insane, absolute insanity.
Yeah, that is, when you said that story about that woman and that man, I remember feeling like that a lot. And I wrote about in my book a story when we went on vacation. And back then we didn't have the GPS like how we do in our cars. It was a separate GPS, like a Garmin or something like that. And we were going to Florida. And I remember holding it because he wanted me to help navigate. And so he would say, okay, tell me when the next turn's coming up and tell me when the next, and I would do that. I would do it, gladly do it. And we reached this like really crazy intersection that, of course, I'm not familiar with because I've never been there before. And I'm like, I don't know. It's not really clear. I'm not sure which way to go. And we missed the turn and he lost it on me. And I was like, I'm okay, fine. Right. You can navigate. I'll just put it up here on the dashboard and you can just look at it. That's what it's intended for. And you can drive and listen to the actual person who's telling you where to go instead of me. And he refused to accept that. And he was like, no, you need to do it. You need to just do it right. You need to just take care. And I'm like, what? Like, I just got reamed for misunderstanding a very complex turn situation. And it was like, I don't even know how to describe it, but just this awful, sick feeling that I just was a prisoner. Like you said, I had to do it. I had no other option. I literally had to do that.
Yeah, always in a lose-lose. And I think for those of you that are watching live, by the way, we appreciate you being here live. If you are watching this podcast live and feel the pull to share this, there are so many women who are in situations like this. And just like Allison is saying here, didn't even recognize that what she was enduring on a daily basis was abuse. There are so many men and women, but predominantly women who are going through this. We're hearing this situation, hearing these stories that Allison is sharing could ultimately change or pivot their life. So if you could share this wherever you're at, we would so appreciate it. I want to ask Allison, when you were living this married life, at what point in that journey did you fall into, I know you said a friend told you, but like at what point, like how long until you finally left, was it when you found out?
Okay. So it wasn't long. When I was made aware of this, it was about 3 months of me to plan my escape from a 17-year marriage. So we'd been together for 20 years. We'd been married for 17. So I literally thought, I am not staying here. I cannot stay here. I will not stay here. This whole thing just was this giant revelation to me that this entire 17 years that I've been blaming myself and trying to fix myself and trying to get medicated and trying to go to gynecologists for my PMS and my PMDD and my craziness and my hormones and like therapists and all of this, I was like, unbelievable. I cannot believe. It was really, really hard to believe. And so I was determined to get out of there. Like I was like, I'm not staying here. I'm getting out. And I planned under the cover of darkness. I turned off my Wi-Fi when I was searching online. I hid things. I hid things at other people's homes that I didn't want him knowing that I had taken from the house. I was squirreling money away because he controlled all the finances. And if I put something on a credit card or wrote a check, he would know about it. Or if I withdrew money from the bank, he would know about it. He had a lot of control when it came to the finances. And I didn't really have, I had the ability to purchase things, but he was very, very, very particular and would scrutinize it all. So I was doing a lot of these things very carefully and taking pictures of documents that we had and birth certificates and so security cards for the kids. Like I just didn't know what to do. So I just took everything. And I figured, this is probably my best chance of getting out of here, planning everything. And I was too scared. Like, as I said before, this is not somebody who ever physically hurt me. There were instances of grabbing wrists and blocking doorways and holding me down and tickling me until I was about to throw up. There were things like that I definitely consider physical abuse, but not in the way that you normally think of. Like a man shoving you up against a wall or pushing you or slapping your face or punching you, like those kinds of things. So it was a little bit harder for me to identify that that was a physical abuse. And so I didn't know what he was capable of. If I now all of a sudden, and now I know about narcissism and I know all these different things, but I didn't know what he was capable of. So as I planned that, I made sure that I was not anywhere near him when I informed him that I was divorcing him. So I sent him an email. I literally was not home and I sent him an email, and all of that took me about 3 months from start to finish to plan and get out.
So, this is the number one, and I'm sure you hear all this all the time with clients of yours or people that contact you, through your storytelling and stuff on social media. But the biggest thing is not being able to escape because you don't have money, having no power. Did you turn to friends? Did you turn to family to stay? How were you able to actually leave? Where did you go?
Yeah, I mean, having support is so, so important. And I know not everyone has support, but I thankfully did. I was able to talk to my own family members, and they were very, very supportive. I had a place to stay until I had. So the place that I had a family that I stayed with temporarily for a couple of weeks. And then I ended up, a friend of mine had a rental unit open at her house that she let me stay in for a year while we were going through the divorce process and all of that. So I really feel fortunate about my circumstances in that way. But I still was having to be really resourceful. And like, I would go to the grocery store and I would buy gift cards with our credit card. Like on my grocery purchases. And then I would just like lose the receipt. So he would always check the receipts. So I'd have to like, oh, I don't know where it is. And I just have to take that criticism when I got home. But I would use those gift cards to buy things that I needed. Like I had purchased a sweeper for my vehicle to see if there were any like tags, air tags, GPS devices, things like that. I couldn't just purchase that without him knowing about it on a credit card. So there were things that I was doing to help myself in that regard. And then the other thing that I did was when I was talking to attorneys, because I knew I had to have an attorney to help me, the attorney allowed me to write a check to them with the date that they were going to be delivering the information to him and his attorney that I was divorcing him. So obviously, if I had written the check and then it cashed out of the account, he would see it. So they let me wait until that day. They held on to that check. I showed them my bank account that I had the money. It was available, but I wouldn't be able to use it until like he knew, like that day. So yeah, thank the Lord that I had the support of friends and family to help me through this. And I realize and understand not everyone has that, but there are other sources of support and other things that you can do, organizations and things that help women who need a place to go or a place to stay. I didn't actually need to use those. But for me, I'm just really, really thankful that I had that.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I always had come across in, Facebook groups, in conversations, was women who are informing their abusive spouse that they are a narcissist. How difficult, how did you navigate that as far as, or did you not, telling or kind of unmasking your abuser and kind of pointing the finger at him? Did you stay quiet? Did you say something? What was your journey like?
Okay, I'm so glad you brought this up because this is something I tell people all the time. If you suspect that your abuser is a narcissist, don't ever tell them. And I've seen it like you've seen it, Facebook groups and things like that, where people say, biggest regret, wish I hadn't done it. Because what happens is they change their abuse tactics. They flip it on you. They're very sneaky, right? That's kind of their MO. They're just very, very sneaky. So if now all of a sudden you're giving them information, right? This is a battle, right? This is a war, and you're just giving them all the insider info, right? Like, let's not do that. And so I knew that because I had done a ton of research about narcissism, and I knew that I could not tell him. And actually, to this day, he does not even know that I think that he is that. I have brought up in court and things like that about being emotionally abused, but I never used the word narcissist, and I've never told him he was a narcissist. So I was very quiet about it. I really just sort of, retreated into myself during those 3 months. I was trying really hard to use the gray rock method, which, if you don't know what the gray rock method is, that's where you just become as boring as a gray rock, right? Because narcissists want to play with their shiny objects like a toy. And if you're not giving them a reaction, then they're going to get bored with you. So I was hoping by doing that, that it would support me, it would help me, it would keep me from getting more abuse from him. And that was really difficult because, especially for somebody like me, I'm a very outgoing, I'm a very bubbly, like happy person. And even like refusing to laugh. I refused to do those kinds of things around him because I knew it was giving him fuel. I knew it was helping him inside, and I wanted to starve him as much as I could, like a drug addict, right? I'm not going to give you that drug anymore. So thankfully, I knew this information back then. So it's important that other people, if they're suspecting this, that it will not do any good for you to tell the narcissist that you think they're a narcissist. It just won't.
Yeah. Luckily, early on in my story or journey, I had listened to a YouTube channel where I had Googled like narcissists can you bring a narcissist to therapy? I had Googled that, something like that. And very distinctly, the first or second video I watched, they were saying how it's one of the worst things you can do, because especially if the therapist doesn't quite know what's going on, all you're doing is you're informing the narcissist on how to act or how to be or how to hide or be even more covert than they already are. They get basically the playbook to their own, I guess, personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So luckily I had watched that kind of early on, trying to fix it. Right. I'm like trying to fix it. I'm like, okay, I get it now. How do we fix it? And, very early on and found that out and recognized like, wow, I can't say anything to him. And I kept that for 4 years. It took me 4 years to get out because we weren't married. So I had to save all of the money because there was no child support or anything that was going to be coming my way. So very, very difficult. So for however long you're having to stay in your situation, keeping that to yourself, continuing to educate yourself, but not letting that come out of the bag for sure. What were some limiting beliefs that you have had to dissect that you may have picked up from your past relationship moving forward?
Okay, so this is one of my absolute favorite topics because that's what I do in my coaching business is I help people shift their limiting beliefs, reach the subconscious mind, because all of the things that are in there, right, that are driving how we feel and then driving how we behave are programs. They're just been programmed by our society, by our parents, teachers, cultures, like religions and all of that. And for me, when I looked back, because I had to go back into my childhood and figure out, what were these limiting beliefs that I even had back then? And one that was super glaring to me was that people will love me if I'm just good and I work really hard, right? So as a child, like I said earlier, I had a really great upbringing, but my mom was not around a lot. She worked a lot. My parents didn't have a ton of money, and my dad he worked the like really early shift, and my mom worked nights and weekends. And so I saw my dad a lot more than I saw my mom. And I got a lot of love and a lot of affirmations when I was bringing home blue ribbons for art projects and getting good grades and having the teachers want to take me out and do this or that and honor me as a student and as a good kid, right? So my mom was always there for those things. She was always there to celebrate me. And I think what happened was I started to learn, it wasn't like anybody ever told me this, but it's something that just happened as I was learning as a child that people will love me, affirm my value, and that I'm good enough if I achieve, if I just work really hard, right? And so then I ended up in a relationship with a narcissist, and that's all I did
Yeah.
was just work harder and harder and harder to try to get that love and try to reach that next rung on the ladder. And that was something that once I started there and I realized that this had to be reprogrammed, that now I can really truly understand my value, understand my worth, regardless of what I do, right? I don't have to earn it. I am worthy no matter what.
Yeah. What would be some advice that you would give to a female listening live or on the replay right now who is stepping into this world of acknowledging that they're in some sort of an abusive relationship and creating a plan? Because that's scary.
It's really scary. It was probably the scariest time of my life. Those 3 months were really, really, really scary. And, because my experience is different from other people's experience, and the way I see things is going to be different than the next person. But I think that if you're stepping into this and you're right, just becoming aware of something like this, the healing actually starts with awareness. So that's good. That's number one, right? But we have to be really curious about ourselves and do that without judgment, right? Because what is going to be really tough during this time is blaming yourself, right? There is a lot of, oh my gosh, how could I be so stupid? I'm such an idiot. I should have left sooner. I should have seen the red flags. I should have known better, right? So just looking at all of these thoughts that are in your head in a very sort of neutral way, that you're leading with curiosity, you're not judging yourself, right? Because if you're sitting here judging yourself, you're beating yourself up. How are you going to move yourself out of a toxic relationship or away from an abuser if you are over here judging yourself and your decisions, right? It is what it is. You are where you are. You now have this understanding and this realization that, okay, wait a second, I've been abused. This is what this is. So number one is just be aware, right? That's going to be number one. Don't judge yourself and try to be curious about what's going on and educate, right? The more you know, the easier it is going to be to move forward and move yourself out. And you're going to need support, right? So educate yourself and get some support from people in your family or friends, on podcasts like yours, on books and YouTube videos. I mean, there's so much information out there. Just be careful when you do it, right? Like I said before, maybe turn the Wi-Fi off if you're searching on your home computer or something like that. Don't leave a paper trail. Don't leave an internet trail. Just start with awareness, be curious, don't judge yourself, and then start that education to help yourself move from one place to the next.
Absolutely. I really like that you're talking about listening to other things, because I think one of the biggest issues, at least that I ran into, was almost, you're dealing with their love bombing, but you're also dealing with your own cognitive dissonance of gaslighting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I am crazy, or maybe I am being a little overly dramatic, or maybe I am overly emotional. So I would do this thing, which is why it took me so long, of planning and then like changing my mind, and then planning and then changing my mind, and then planning and changing my mind. And what I found was, when I consistently would be listening, reading, watching things around abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, reminding myself on a consistent basis that what I was going through was real, and that I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't being overly dramatic. So I love that you're saying that it is so important to every single day be educating yourself on the situation that you're in so you don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to be like, it gets comfortable, because they do that. You get comfortable for a couple of days, and they don't freak out for a day, because they can feel the vibration of you. They can feel you gaining in power. They can feel that maybe you're not as scared, or you're being a little more uppity or snooty or powerful. They can sense that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy for them to kind of do a love bomb, or to do a calm vibration for a day or two, and you start to kind of double think. So I love that. Number 2, I want to ask you a question, because this is one of the things that I always have. And I love that you were so open and honest about this, because I consider myself very open and honest about my story, but not to the point that you were. So I so appreciate this. But okay, so the loyalty. So my ex would always use this word loyalty on me. You're not loyal. I thought you were loyal. I thought that you were a loyal girl, but you're not a loyal girl. So there's always this vibration of me not being a loyal woman, which for me, I guess, was part of my identity, because it would hit me like right here.
Mm-hmm.
When it got to the point where I recognized I needed to escape, and I had to do things exactly what you're saying, where you have to be a little manipulative with the money or gift cards or whatever it is, how does somebody who is a good person, right? We're good people. We don't want to be cheaters or liars or thieves or anything like that. How does a woman sit with herself and negotiate with herself that this is necessary in order to escape? How were you able to sit with that? Because I had a really hard time with that.
So what you're describing to me is a number one tactic of an abuser, where they latch onto something that you really value in yourself, right? So if you are a very loyal person and they know that you're a very loyal person, well, clearly that's something that you value in yourself, right? So then they use it against you to then manipulate you into doing what they want. So if you were believing that you're a very loyal person, which you are, and then they tell you that you're you're not a loyal person because you're doing this or that, right? So then that's going to create, like you said, this cognitive dissonance. And it's like, like, I know, yes, I am a loyal person, but if I leave, or if I choose this or choose that, then that is actually proof that I'm not a loyal person, right? So I think the big thing here is, because for me, it was, you're not a good Christian, you're not a good mom, you're not a good wife, right? Those were kind of the 3 pillars that he would tell me constantly about myself, is proving to your mind that that is not true, right? Because if all of a sudden, in my mind, I'm thinking, I am a bad mom. If I leave, I'm tearing the family apart. And if I do this, the kids are going to suffer, right? It's all about what it is that's going on at your thinking in your mind. And you have to be open, right? This is the most important part. You have to be open to other possibilities, not just the thoughts that are on repeat, not just the automatic autopilot things that are coming up in your brain. You have to be open to, maybe there is some other possibility here, right? If I leave, am I actually being a good mom? Mm-hmm. Yes, because that's what I did. I thought, I'm actually giving my kids a 50% shot, right? A 50% shot to be able to see what a healthy life, what a healthy parent, what a healthy relationship looks like. But if I stay, maybe that actually means that I'm being a bad mom. So it's a change of perspective. It's being open to other possibilities, right? Because if you believe, oh, divorce should never happen, and all of a sudden you're thinking of divorce, that you're going to be wrestling in your mind with that. It's going to be bringing you back to that. So are there circumstances where maybe divorce should happen, like when you're being abused, or when there's high infidelity, or infidelity at all, or somebody's sending you into bankruptcy, or whatever that might be, right? We just have to be open to these other possibilities. And I think that's really key, because that can help move you from one place to the next. It's just being open to these other possibilities.
Yeah. And even just the fact of you talking about being a Christian, because that's a huge one, is it's not godly to leave, and you have to stay, you have your vows and all of this. And a lot of times that is what keeps women in these situations, is the hovering conversation around being a godly wife or mother.
100%.
So heavy on so many levels. I so appreciate you being here and talking about this. Listen, I would love for you to tell those watching live and those on the replay, what exactly you do, who should be reaching out to you. Obviously those that are still here watching 44 minutes in, they're resonating with everything that you're saying. They're maybe thinking about contacting you. Who do you help? Who should be contacting you, and where should they go?
So a couple things. The first thing, you can get my book. It's on Amazon. It's When Tears Leave Scars. It's a true story memoir. You will find hope, inspiration, and awareness inside the pages of this book. You can get it on Audible or on Kindle or paperback, however you prefer. The whole reason that I wrote that book was for people who are survivors of narcissism, people who are still victims of narcissism, and even people who maybe don't know about it and want to learn more about it. Like, maybe your mom or your dad or your friend who's never experienced this, to help them understand like what I'm going through. Yeah. So that's one part. The other part is, and I never intended to be a coach. Like, that wasn't a goal of mine. I just sort of, it became part of my path and my journey. But I help women who are, trying to heal from all of these deep wounds. And I think of it like poison that I had to extract out of my brain, right? I wanted to not only get away from him physically, but I didn't want these leftover conditioned behaviors, conditioned thought patterns. I wanted to be free of that. So I help women reach their subconscious mind and reprogram their mind, essentially, is what I do. It is an amazing tool to help you so that you can heal. You can stop thinking about the pain of the past. You can stop getting triggered. You can stop, dealing with all of this like emotional exhaustion that is so often left over after emotional abuse. So I do have other resources like on my website for planning escapes and things like that, but I don't do that in my coaching business. I really just focus on where are you now and where do you want to be, and let me help you get there emotionally.
Beautiful. Where do you hang out the most? Yeah. Where can people follow you?
Okay. I am on Instagram mostly. You'll see me there most often. It's Allison K Dagney is my handle. I'm also on Facebook, and I do have I'm kind of dabbling in YouTube, but I don't really do a whole lot over there. So really, if you want to reach me, I would just go over to Instagram or Facebook and send me a message on Messenger.
I love it. And why do you do what you do?
To me, it's all about creating a ripple effect. It's all about helping as many women as I can, right? Because I was blessed to me, I am fortunate to have found this tool to help. And it has been so transformational to me that I know that if other people do this, that they will get the same results. And so for me, it's all about, if I can help just one person change how they are feeling, change how they're showing up in the world, and, heal from this horrible, insidious abuse, then I've done my part. So I really want to create that ripple effect where I help, and then maybe somebody else helps somebody else. And just helping people is really my goal.
Beautiful. Well, I love it. I thank you so much for being here, for hanging out with us, for being open and honest and vulnerable about your own story, and really giving some great advice that individuals who are dealing with a situation like this can literally start using immediately. So I so appreciate you being here. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
I guess maybe the one thing that I would say is, if you are there's two things. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist now, there is hope, right? There is the hope that you can get out. You just have to plan. But then there's also this part where a lot of people don't talk about is after you leave, and there's emotions that you never expected. You think, oh, I'm going to be free. And you are, but then there's this sort of nagging emotional upset, and just be gentle with yourself, right? You are a work in progress. Don't be hard on yourself. You have to treat yourself like you would treat a friend who was struggling. And that is going to be key to taking care of yourself and healing and moving forward.
Beautiful. And agree.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. For those of you watching live or on the replay, if you resonated with Allison and all the goodness that she shared today, make sure that you check her out on her website, whentearsleavescars.com. It's right above her head area there, and then also in the description below in a clickable link. We love to connect people here on this platform in order to make sure that we all continue to rise. Thank you so much for joining us here. This community is expanding every single day and is filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. If you have an amazing story to share, check us out at hernation.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and